Welcome back. Well, today I am joined by Dr. Devin Binder, who is a neurosurgeon, and he is also the medical director of the Neuroscience Institute at Orange Coast Medical Center. Well, Dr. Binder, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Now, we're going to talk today about MR-guided focused ultrasound treatment for essential tremor. Now, before we even get into the technicalities of all of this, tell me a little bit about yourself, and then if you could briefly tell me the overview of what an essential tremor is.
Sure. So I'm a neurosurgeon, which means I'm a board-certified brain and spine surgeon, and I've been in practice in Orange County since 2007. I'm currently the medical director of the Neuroscience Institute at Orange Coast Medical Center, as you mentioned, and I treat brain and spine conditions. Essential tremor is a very interesting condition of tremor that affects about 10 million Americans. And it involves action tremor, so that when someone reaches for an object to be able to do anything, whether it's eating, writing, dressing, typing on a computer, or any type of hobby, they have significant tremor during the movement. So it's very debilitating at its severe stages, and that's what we're treating with this MR-guided focused ultrasound.
So, when you talk about shaking and when you're actually doing a movement, it sounds like Parkinson's to me. So how is that different?
Right, it's a very good question. So Parkinson's disease has tremor as one of its cardinal symptoms. Parkinson's disease patients also have other conditions such as rigidity or stiffness, trouble with postural instability or balance, and what's called bradykinesia or slowness of movements. So Parkinson's disease patients absolutely can have tremor, and there's a category of Parkinson's patients that have what's called tremor predominant Parkinson's. Mm-hmm. But Parkinson's disease patients often have these other conditions. The other thing is with essential tremor, first of all, it's just tremor, but the tremor is quite different. In Parkinson's disease, it's more of what's called a resting tremor, where at rest the person has a tremor. And often when they actually reach for things, the tremor improves. In essential tremor, it's actually the opposite, where they don't have much of a resting tremor, but when they reach for something, it's called an action or kinetic tremor. Then when they actually are doing a movement, at the end of the movement, they have a big problem with tremor. Wow. So the type of tremor is actually quite different in Parkinson's tremor versus essential tremor.
Is the issue coming from the same location? Is it from the brain?
Absolutely. We now know, based on decades of work, that there are circuits in the brain that control movement, and particularly structures through something called the thalamus. The thalamus is our target to control tremor in the case of essential tremor. And in the structures are slightly different with Parkinson's disease and essential tremor. So the brain targets are slightly different, but the goal is the same, and that's to interrupt the circuit. Mm-hmm. Now that we know the neuroanatomy of the brain in some detail, we can target the structures responsible for tremor. And basically, the way I think of it is interrupting the circuit of the tremor. Once we can access that circuit, either with brain stimulation or ultrasound, we're then able to basically cut the wires, if you will, between those areas very selectively, so we can just eliminate the tremor and try to avoid any side effects on other areas of the brain.
So, for it affecting 10 million people, I haven't heard of this before, and it doesn't seem to be widely publicized. So how is it that you would identify that someone has this issue?
That's a great question, and it's very much less publicized, as you said, than Parkinson's disease, for example, which is very well known to the general public. And yet, essential tremor is the single most common movement disorder. It is actually often underdiagnosed and undertreated. There are medications that can help it. Things like beta blockers, like primidone or propranolol, are often prescribed, and they can slightly reduce tremor. Mm-hmm. But in the moderate to severe level, where patients have quite severe tremor, where they reach for an object and they simply can't even do things like bathe or clean themselves or dress or eat, hold utensils, pour from a cup, anything like that, it becomes quite functionally disabling. So you're absolutely right. It's underdiagnosed, and in our view, it's undertreated. And this is great to have the opportunity to talk to the public about it.
Yeah. So at what point would someone know that this is an issue for them? Is it a gradual thing or does it just happen one day?
It is gradual. It's different than Parkinson's disease, which comes on at different stages. But for example, people can have essential tremor and that runs in their families so that they can get it at an early age because of the genetic component. Other people, it's not in their families, but they can get it at ages, for example, in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. But once they have it, it generally tends to gradually progress to the point where medications don't help anymore. And you ask, I sometimes see people in the supermarket or, in public, they clearly have essential tremor and they have trouble doing things. At its most severe stages, people become socially withdrawn because they simply can't go to restaurants because they're going to spill, for example, soup on their clothes or something.
Yeah.
And they end up basically at home in many cases.
Wow, that's really unfortunate for sure. And they don't know about this particular treatment. So let's talk about what this treatment actually does. So it's an ultrasound, which doesn't sound very invasive, which sounds awesome. So tell me how that works.
The MR guided focused ultrasound really brings together two technologies. The MRI gives us the structural detail in the brain, and modern MRI is really quite amazing. We can get great detail looking at every single brain structure. So we can analyze and assess exactly where it is in each individual brain. Your brain and my brain and anyone's brain is slightly different, but we can basically find this exact structure in everybody's brain called the thalamus. And then that portion of it that's responsible for tremor. So we can target the structure based on the MRI. And that's the imaging. Then the ultrasound is the delivery of ultrasound waves. But basically, the way I like to think of it is converging beams of ultrasound. And that's exactly what happens. During the treatment, there's a kind of like a half dome planetarium type thing that's going over the head. And then the ultrasound beams through that transducer go through the head and meet in the target. What's interesting is that it's all computer controlled so that they just meet in the target and don't, affect surrounding tissue, kind of like radiation beams meeting in a target. And so it's a three-dimensional treatment with ultrasound, almost like radiation, although it's ultrasound. And you're absolutely right. It's non-invasive in the sense that there's no incision. It's all done in a radiology suite. And we're able to then basically access that target based on the MRI. So that's why the treatment is called MR guided focused ultrasound, because those beams are focused on the target. Okay. And the bottom line is once we get that target up to about 55 degrees Celsius, then the person has a durable effect on their tremor.
Wow. So we're going to show a video right now of a patient that had this treatment.
Well, we're here with Mr. Ed Titch from Arizona. Thank you for visiting us here. We're going to be treating him for MR-guided focused ultrasound treatment for the essential tremor in his right hand. Ed, how are you feeling so far?
Good.
Good. We haven't done anything yet. We're going to just show the tremor here. If you wouldn't mind holding that. There's the tremor. Kind of hold it out straight if you would. That'll bring it out. That's good. Thank you, Ed. And then if you would, kind of bring it towards your mouth as if you're going to drink. And that's what we're going to try to get rid of today, that action tremor. Thank you. Perfect. As if that were a normal cup of water, and go ahead and try to drink from it. Go ahead there.
Oh, yeah, before, I don't know, see the before and after, I was, trying to, there was no way I could hold a cup like this in the past.
Right. And what about writing? Was it very hard to write and things like that?
My writing looked like scribbling.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, like I told the people here, people used to tell me I had nice handwriting, and got to the point where, couldn't print, couldn't write.
Let's just see what that finger, that hand, if you just point out towards my finger there.
Look how stable that is compared to what it was.
What it was, yeah.
What it was like much worse. Let's have go towards your nose, if you would, just sort of coming towards your nose gradually. You've got great control there, no tremor at all.
None.
Wonderful,
None.
wonderful. That's
what
great.
actually
Thank
happens
you.
to them?
Yes, on the day of the treatment, we assess, well, first of all, we assess every patient on the basis of their particular anatomy. We get a CAT scan actually of the skull to look at their skull density, and that's to make sure that the ultrasound beams can focus on the target. And of course, we get the MRI scan to show the detail of the target. Mm-hmm. The actual treatment is done with a frame on the head, which is done under a ton of local anesthesia. The most important thing is the comfort of someone going through this. And then basically the treatment process takes about 2 hours, during which time we're getting the baseline scans. The person is lying flat on the MRI scanner with pillows and blankets to keep them comfortable. Mm-hmm. And then they're going in and out of the scanner. Once we have the baseline scans, then we do the treatment with the ultrasound. We do that in packets of energy so that we can then test the tremor. Once we've hit the target, we want to hit it up to, like I said, that 55-degree target level. And then the tremor is dramatically improved. We do the testing of the tremor during the process, during the procedure, in order to make sure that we've hit the target. Mm-hmm. At the end of the procedure, we're aiming for 80 to 90% plus control of the tremor. In other words, getting it down to a very fine tremor, but to where the person has basically much better control of their hand. And that's the process. It takes about 2 hours. At the end of the procedure, the frame is taken off the head. The patient is in recovery for about an hour. They go back home or to a hotel if they're from out of town. Mm-hmm. And then the last part, which is pre-organized, is we get an MRI scan the day after the procedure. And that's to verify that we've hit the target. It's kind of a report card for us that we see a little dot, 8mm dot at the target to show we've definitely isolated and interrupted that circuit. And so then we know based on that we're going to get good and durable tremor control.
Approximately how long does it last?
Right. So the first studies came out in 2016. And as far as we know, as long as we get the brain temperature up to the right level, it's permanent.
Wow. That is amazing. How many people have you treated this way?
We started our program in November of 2020 at Orange Coast Medical Center, and we've treated 31 patients to date. And we have 28 out of them have fantastic tremor control. The other 3 have partial tremor control, and they had a lower skull density, so we weren't able to focus the beams as much. So that's why we do a very careful screening process to make sure that we get, in the vast majority of people, really good control of tremor. But please keep in mind, these are people where medications haven't worked. So we screen people very carefully for this type of invasive procedure. But it is also without an incision, and it's done in radiology. So people go home the same day.
Now, are you the only one here in Southern California that does this?
We are the newest center. There's 2 centers in Southern California, our center and UCLA, which started before us. Okay. And there's 1 center in Northern California, which is at Stanford. But of the 3 of our centers, we're the only 3 centers currently in California.
Wow. Well, I'm really happy that we're able to speak with you about this so we can get the word out, because who knows in our community if these folks have been dealing with this and now they know that there's some place for them to go. So that is awesome. Is there anything in particular that I might have missed?
We just really want to meet the people and talk to those people with tremor, because I think, just like you said, there's a lot of people out there who simply aren't aware that we have started this program, that this treatment option is out there. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, we have plenty of people that are very highly educated about tremor and they seek this out. So we're happy to provide it to them as well. So we want to sort of be a resource for the community in Orange County and throughout Southern California.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the information. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And if you would like to know more about the MR-guided focused ultrasound treatment at Memorial Care Orange Coast Medical Center, call them at 1-800-758-5817, or you can visit memorialcare.org/OC tremor treatment. We'll be right back after this.